Okay, going live on the stream. Stream is now live. This is the Techno Buffet podcast, episode number 634, recorded Wednesday, July 5th, 2023, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Dum-dum-dum.
Welcome to another exciting and probably not short episode of the Techno Buffet podcast, despite the fact there are only 4 things in the show notes, because there's other stuff to talk about.
All right.
I'm setting expectations here, so if we don't have a full show, then there will be disappointment
Oh, will there?
from all the listeners,
Oh,
of which there are hopefully some somewhere.
some.
Yeah.
All right.
So, did you do any home automation-y things this week?
Man, I had everything go wrong on my stuff this week.
You too? You tell your tale of woe first, and I'll go over my tale of woe.
So, I have, Atham and Cough.
Is it Atham or at home?
There's no E.
Yeah, but I think they're trying to make it a version of at home.
Okay, whatever. And I had like 5 of these things go bad. And when I say go bad, I mean they stopped responding and the relay was turned off. So no electricity was passing, which sucked because one of them was to an outdoor refrigerator.
That would be bad.
Yeah, we had to throw a lot of food away. And then my daughter has 2 of these in her closet so that they can control like both sides of the lights. And one went bad, so I replaced it. And then the other went bad, so I had to replace it.
Were these version 1 or version 2 cough plugs?
Version 1.
Okay.
But only one of them was a cough plug. The others were the at home ones.
Okay.
I had one go bad in the game room that was turning on and off a salt lamp.
You sure it wasn't like a power surge thing?
That it went bad over like a series like a week.
No, I'm saying could there be a problem with your power somehow?
I don't know, but could be. What do I know?
Well,
weird.
No, I'm trying to think of what would cause a bunch of unrelated objects.
They were all over the house, completely different circuits, inside, outside, different sides of the house.
Well, I remember years ago I got one of those like power cleaners. I forget what's the name of it? Conditioner is one thing.
Yeah.
And I remember I would see
my entire house.
Yeah, I had like one plug-in one that was near some of my electronics that were more sensitive, and it was occasionally reporting either higher or lower voltage than spec that it was adjusting. But no, I wouldn't necessarily suggest putting it everywhere, but I would suggest possibly checking it if you have a tool in which to do so.
I know that if I have my 3D printer running,
yeah,
then like the fluorescent lights flicker. If they're on a nearby circuit, but I don't know. It was just weird. And then ESP Home was freaking out because I would reload the exact same config, but on a different box and put it up and it would show up as a second one. And then none of the automations would work. So I'd have to delete the old one and then the old one would come back. It's just
strange.
Home Assistant was just not my buddy this week.
Well, I got my first V2 cough plug because of things not being my buddy.
Same thing. And I like I did the same thing. I replaced a lot of these with version twos, and I like the fact that they're smaller.
I think
I
they,
don't like the fact that they're off center.
yeah, I'm going to agree with that, but I bought one for a specific purpose.
What's up?
So, okay, so this is my sort of story. It starts with dust.
Dust.
So, you know that I've been complaining about the fact that there were high dust levels in and air quality problems in the northeastern United States due to Canadians and their fires.
Okay.
You heard about this, I assume.
I know that there are Canadian fires,
Yeah,
and they're very sorry
and you know that they were
for me. Very
you know they've
sorry,
been drifting across the border.
as fires are wont to do,
Yeah,
and their
and
smoke.
this well, essentially, the air quality conditions were such that I decided to do two things. First of all, I added in what I've referred to previously as Bravo site. I added an air quality sensor, and I was up there for a few days for the Independence Day holiday. And I decided to teach essentially the ESP Home system to generate the air quality index off of the sensor. So instead of having it done outside of it, the sensor itself is doing the math and returning the actual air quality index number.
Okay.
It's also returning a textual representation of how bad the air is.
Like wear a mask or you're okay.
No, there's actually a scale. So right now, that particular I created a text sensor. You know they have those.
Okay.
If you look at the specs for ESP Home, you can create it. So I have two sensors. So I have the air quality index sensor, which essentially takes the uh, averaged output over a 24-hour period from the particulate sensors, and it figures out the air quality index, and then another one which takes the air quality index and turns it into a textual reading. So right now we're at moderate. By the way, we were at good yesterday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we got all the way back down to good, and now we're creeping up again. And you know what's above moderate?
Um, Liberal.
Wrong type of moderate. So what we have here is just to give you the sort of example. So 0 to 50 is good. 50
Okay.
to 100 is moderate. 100 to 150 is unhealthy for sensitive groups. 150 to 200 is unhealthy. 200 to 300 is very unhealthy, and 300 or above is hazardous.
Wow. Okay.
So I also hooked up a calculator into the weather station software that would essentially graph this over time. Because who doesn't love a graph?
Yay, graphs.
Yeah, so it was much higher, but when I finally got everything configured, which took me a bit, I think the highest that I had during that period was 170, which we've established is bad.
Yep.
So after I finished all this work and got everything working, somehow I decided that I would take what I did in Station Bravo, remote into Station Alpha, and do the same thing. Since I had the air quality sensors there, but I hadn't done the air quality index stuff. So I did that, but somehow I succeeded in getting the server shut off, so for 3 days it wasn't on, and I had to wait until I came back to turn it back on. And discovered that since that's also the computer that runs Home Assistant, that I have a few technological problems. If my Home Assistant instance goes down, suddenly some of my lights are not controllable anymore.
Yeah.
How fortunate that I have the electrician coming, hopefully one of these days, to move my ceiling fan. I finally think I found another person to do that, since the last person didn't. And I'm paying extra so that this electrician, who I've not met, who's affiliated with somebody I have, can run an extra wire so that the controls will be at the switch. So it'll be a smart switch that can control the fan and can control the light separately, so I can have all of the same abilities. But if it goes off, There is no problem in the room.
Cool.
I hope. We'll see if the electrician shows up. I know the guy who referred me to the electrician will show up because he's going to do something else. But so that was my long journey to get things working, and then Prime Day hit me.
What's going on Prime Day?
Okay, so they were offering. This is a slightly different story involving a Ring video doorbell. Are you familiar with those?
I think so.
Okay, so I installed several of these for family members, and they were trying to track whether or not a package had shown up while they were away. And the video doorbell doesn't show the stoop. So I've installed there a deck box for them. So the deck box is essentially a package box where people can leave their packages. Except the delivery people just sort of throw it on the stoop from the ground level. We have a stoop that's a couple of stairs up. They don't walk up to the stoop. They don't look at the stoop. They just sort of throw the package from a distance and walk away. With all of course, the care that implies.
Okay.
So it's sort of hard to see, was the package delivered, because it is not going in the box and it's not going anywhere else. So they liked the Ring. So I went to look, was there a Ring that actually offered a different viewing angle? And it turns out the one that I installed there was the Ring Pro, and the Ring Pro 2 does have a head-to-toe viewing angle. So I said to myself, that's perfect. And so I looked, and it said $249.99. And I said, I'm not paying that. I'm not justifying any family member paying that. It's just not worth it. So then I get an email that it is 50% off for pre-Prime Day sale. So I bought it. And I installed it, and then I went inside, and the chime wasn't working. So I fiddled with the chime and shorted the whole system out.
That's weird.
Well, the wiring is original. Apparently, a 1976 doorbell wire doesn't necessarily stay in pristine condition for nearly 50 years. As surprising as that is.
Right, but I mean, how much updating do you need for? I mean, doorbells have been the same forever.
Yeah, but the Ring uses it for charging. So so I got somebody to come and help me. Local handyman. I needed some because it's really hard to ring the doorbell and hear it ding by yourself if you're outside versus inside, since the outside and the inside are not that close to each other. There's a hallway. So I got some help, and ultimately the transformer one needed more amperage. It was able to survive on the amperage it had, but also there were several shorts and breaks in the doorbell wire, so parts of it had to be replaced. So it's now working. And I have head-to-toe vision there. And when I say I, obviously any video doorbell I installed, I have access to. So, nice image. Also, this one has all of these cute little features like bird's eye view and radar.
Yeah.
And color night vision. So bird's eye view, if I understand correctly, is that they figure out where you are on a map. They figure out where people are in the image, and they can show you from the air where people moved around, or they can figure it out by the image.
Sure.
So somebody arrived in the building recently. My upstairs neighbor here, for example, gets deliveries. And this was installed elsewhere in this area. I've mentioned that there are a bunch of family members who have apartments in this and the adjoining buildings. So it was installed in one of them, but it picked up this food delivery to my neighbor, and you can see the dot running from walking from the street and up the stairs. So nice upgrade. I'm not going to say I'm the biggest fan of Ring. It has its problems, but They want it to be a ring, so it's a ring.
Yay, ring.
And again, cost me a few bucks to the gentleman who helped me out, who's, I have to appreciate him. Always good to have a handyman around who's willing to come over and do random things for you.
Very true.
Yeah, he's useful. I think he's collectively he's if I'm he's saved my family a lot of money in actually replacing things by helping us fix them, and he's told us that we've put his kids through college
Yeah,
as a family.
cool.
Anyway, jokes aside about that, so that was some of the progress that I think I've made. But again, those are all, it's task after task some days. So I had, because of the fact that the server went down and I wanted to be able to restart it if that happened again, I put a cough smart plug in between the power for the computer and the battery backup UPS. So if something does happen, I could directly connect to the cough plug and restart the server with a hard boot.
Cool. I have to set the power on state.
Well, the power on state on the computer isn't a power on state. But sometimes things are just so royally messed up and you're so far away that just turning the power off and turning it back on is the best solution.
Right, but you'll need to go into the BIOS and make sure that if power is returned,
No, that's always been
on.
there. I have that because
Oh,
of the battery itself. So if the power is shut off, then the thing will shut itself down, but I want it when the power comes back on for it to turn itself back on. So I've already done that. This is if the whole thing locks up. So I have this odd thing with it that sometimes it seems to somehow trigger power saving mode and suspend and other things despite the fact that I didn't tell it to. It's also locked up on software updates and a few other things. One of these days I'll figure out why, but this is at least a good backup. I also replaced my center channel speaker after
nice.
15, 20 years.
What?
I think it's been 15 or 20 years since I bought the last one. It got all banged up and scratched, and I decided there was a sale, why not?
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was a poke. I switched to a Mica, so I keep buying the budget brands. But so now I can hear dialogue better. That's usually what the center channel tends to do.
Yeah, I still have my somethings on subtitles.
Yeah. No, I've used subtitles when I need them, and there's certain audio that it's just impossible to hear no matter how hard you put it up because it's just not clear.
Right.
But I thought getting a better, and again, not significantly better because there's still a budget model, a center channel would get me a little more clarity on them. And it did, surprisingly. I think it's better. I think I was able to better balance it with the other speakers. So I did a surprising amount of things, despite the fact I feel like I didn't accomplish enough. But we'll see. I'm also working on getting my scanning stuff started up again so that I can scan things.
Cool.
Well, I'm trying to make progress. I had a lot of free time while I was waiting for a phone call, which I was talking about before we started what phone call I was waiting for. But beyond that, as I told you before the show, there's a possibility that I may be away for 2 weeks. That hasn't quite been confirmed, but if that happens, then I will ask for an alternate recording time for this program.
Okay.
If it doesn't happen, then I won't.
No. I mean, cool.
We'll make it work. And if there's horrible internet in the hotel, then we'll figure that out too. I'm told there isn't. But I had that little incident in Bulgaria that I still remember, where I showed up at a hotel that said they had high-speed internet, went down to the desk about an hour after I checked in and said, I'm getting 50 kilobits a second. And they said, is that slow? I said, not if it's the 1980s. But They fixed it eventually, but I found it hilarious that nobody else in the hotel had complained about that. Anyway, so
That's funny.
a few things. We have a few stories, and then there was a. Even though I didn't put it into the show notes originally, there was a release of Home Assistant. So here are a few things that happened this week. Not that much. Google could be turning to crowdsourcing for more precise weather data. You know, if there's a weather data story, I'm on it.
Yeah.
So Google essentially will be asking people about the weather, like, is it
Good.
raining? Yes or no.
What?
So,
Really?
yes, they are crowdsourcing additional weather information, which I
Hmm.
thought was interesting. I think part of that is that they're relying on the Weather Channel. You really don't want to get into bed with big weather.
I don't.
It's dangerous.
All right.
They'll crush you. Anyway, 9 to 5 Google had this interesting story that I caught, and they linked to a further story, which is about who killed Google Reader
Right.
and why it was killed. So why am I citing the 9 to 5 story? They had some additional commentary on top of the original story, which I wanted to make sure I cited as well. And disappointing. It is still a product I miss. I tried to write my own, but it just isn't the same. If you own a TicWatch Pro 3 or a TicWatch E3, and remember I still have an E3, you can apply to test Wear OS 3. Almost in time for Wear OS 4 to come out. If you remember from a few weeks ago, apparently the people at Moboy reported that their custom hardware is so custom that it was taking them a really long time to update their software. Like
Which
years.
makes one wonder if it's even worthwhile.
Well, that's sort of the question. At this point, the only reason to do it is because they promised everybody who bought the thing that they were going to deliver. They could just cut their losses and give everybody who bought it a coupon for a new one.
A coupon. A coupon.
Well, I'm not suggesting they give it to people for free, but they could just say, "We're not going to give this to you. We made a promise. Here, take this percentage off of something that will support the thing we promised you." I'm not saying that that would make up for it, but. And if you are a YouTube Premium subscriber, which I believe both of us are,
Yes.
you can get badges.
Why would I want that?
I don't know. Apparently, I can enjoy my premium feature. I can earn badges for reaching milestones and enjoying my premium features. I don't know what that actually gets me. Do I get to show them to other people and brag that I was one of the first 10 million members, or I'm part of Team Premium, or I had 30 hours of picture-in-picture? None of these sound really exciting. I don't know. The most excitement I had on YouTube Premium lately was when it somehow got stuck on 1950s Italian music. That wasn't particularly exciting, but that stuff gets stuck in your head. It's catchy. But I don't know how it decided to get stuck on 1950s Italian music. Because a lot of the time I listen to my own music collection, but I was just looking for something different. So I picked one song, and then all of a sudden it jumped to 1950s Italian music. And before you know it, I was listening to, what was it? It was the Neapolitan cover of 16 Tons,
All right.
which is weird. But yeah. Anyway, so as of today, and I have not yet watched the video, but the features look interesting. 2023.7 of Home Assistant came out. Have you installed this yet, Jerry?
I did.
Have you any observations? Because I have not had time because I was out attending to my physician.
No.
Okay. So A lot of the things look interesting. Services can now respond with data. So essentially, if you call a service, it can provide data back, which could be used for something else.
Which is cool. Or I suspect that's cool. We'll see.
Well, I think a lot of these things are building blocks for more things.
Yes.
So one of the services that they've put in would be a service to ask Home Assistant for a list of events on your calendar.
Which currently errors out for me.
And I said, haven't tried it. And the other one is to ask Assist a command or question and get a response back. So you can start putting in these custom interactions. So what they're saying is, if you combine the two of those in an automation, you could ask Home Assistant for today's calendar events, add things like weather information, send it to something like ChatGPT, ask it to summarize it, and use that response to send a notification to your phone. And someone's put together a blueprint that does that. So the idea is, even if that's not your cup of tea, the ability to get responses from various things happening can encourage a lot of creativity. So I think this is a good feature. They've also added this to scripts, so your script can respond as well. And you can use that response in your automation. They redesigned the dialog box for a lock. They've added a sentence trigger. So when you can essentially trigger an automation when a sentence is said to the Assist conversation agent. So their example, if you look at the notes, would be, you could say, "What a mess," and it could start the vacuum. They've created a dashboard assistance card. They've added image entities. So this is similar to the camera entity, but again, it just shows an image.
Yay.
Apparently, the energy dashboard will now tell you how self-sufficient your home is. By the way, in my case, that answer is 0, because I have no solar power or water power or any other sort of renewable energy. You now have not only copy and paste in automation and script editors, which was added last time, but now for dashboards, you can copy and cut and paste cards between your various views. So that's another cute feature. You can also apparently teleport.
I don't know what that means.
So essentially, when your dashboards use a masonry layout, which is one of the options for the layout, it will show a positional number when you edit it, and that will allow you to adjust the number and change the position rather than having to hit the arrow over and over again. So it makes it easier to rearrange your cards. Can I get
Well,
a
that
woohoo?
is cool. I think the whole copy and paste thing needs to be more prevalent throughout the world.
I'm fine with it. Speaking of the world, see, that's what we call a segue.
Segway.
Yeah. You can now select what time zone the interface should use in your user profile.
Nice.
And it'll adjust all the times. So they've also made some other adjustments. They made adjustments to the integrations dashboard, which they, remember, completely redesigned last time. So they've tried to essentially simplify it a bit.
Oh.
If your automation or script has an error, it will now show up as unavailable.
That could be helpful.
As opposed to previously where it just would not appear at all.
Yeah.
There's a new script dialog, so if you want to create a new script, just like when you create a new automation, there'll be a few different options for presets. And I like this one. They've sped up Bluetooth proxies. So a 40 to 80% decrease in network traffic between Home Assistant and the proxy device, because it will now bundle and send multiple Bluetooth advertisements in bulk instead of sending them one by one. And the processing of the advertisements is now done in Home Assistant instead of on the proxy device.
Cool.
So they've realized that more, and I heard at least one person mention this, that a lot of people don't have a Bluetooth receiver in their Home Assistant device anymore. They just use a bunch of proxies,
Yep.
which I think is a good idea.
I agree. It's what I do.
Yeah, and it allows you to spread them out throughout the house,
Yep.
which is, of course, what
Although
we
I'm
want.
really impressed with the range of Bluetooth proxies, especially if you use like an ESP32 with ESP Home running on it. It's
I agree.
longer than I expected, or further than I expected.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of them around the house because I have the temperature sensors all around, and they're all ESP32, so they're all proxying Bluetooth.
Yep. It's about the only thing that will escape a freezer or a water heater.
Yeah, and that's you said that you lost some of the stuff in a refrigerator. I'm guessing you didn't have a Bluetooth temperature sensor in there.
I didn't. I've got them in the one inside the house, but not outside.
I can guess what you are going to be ordering.
Yeah.
Anyway, there have been a bunch of changes to the Matter integration, but I have no Matter devices, so I don't know about that. Although I am impressed by this notation. Matter integration now supports climate devices, so if you have a Nest thermostat, not the E or the Learning ones, with the latest firmware, you can now use it directly with Home Assistant, local and without clouds. There's an interesting reason to get Matter working. If I had a Nest
That's super
thermostat,
cool.
if I had a
Because a
Nest
lot of
thermostat,
Matter stuff didn't work at all without the cloud.
yeah.
Or so I'm told. Not that I,
Well, again, it's still in beta. It's supposed to work without the cloud, but again, this is an option. They're also changing the policy for deprecating YAML integration configuration options. So they now require that a YAML configuration option is deprecated for at least 6 months before being removed. And if
which
possible,
is cool.
an automatic,
Annoying, but cool.
yeah, but an automatic migration is now required, and an issue in the repairs dashboard will be raised if the deprecation applies to your configuration. So they're trying to make it more obvious when they do a breaking change, such as getting rid of something they don't need anymore. So again, a minor woohoo.
Woohoo!
Yep. So a lot going on this week.
Yes.
But see, even though we talked about all that, we still have only been talking for what now? 35 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So even with all of that, it's a relatively short show.
It is.
I'm sorry. I feel like I've let everybody down without having more show
No,
notes.
not at all. I've had a really long day, and I'm really looking forward to laying down in bed and shutting my eyes.
Me too, but you know the old expression.
No.
Never read Robert Frost?
What?
There's a classic poem. It ends, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep." And
I don't
miles,
have miles to go before I sleep. I
it's
do
a
not.
it's a figurative mile,
Yep.
not a literal mile. Well, actually,
Okay.
in the poem, it's a literal mile. In this context, it's a figurative one. I always have miles to go. A lot to do. I haven't talked about the half of it, but the rest isn't really technology related. So, me and my dream. There actually were two things I ordered that I will talk about in the future. Martin Jerry released a switch with a built-in humidity sensor that I wanted to try, and it's pre-flash with Tesmota.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a problem in my bathroom ever since I had it fixed. So when they redid the tile in my bathroom, I had them put in a Leviton humidity sensor switch, and that thing does not work. I want the exhaust fan in the bathroom to be on for a lot longer, and it seems to not let it, even though the room has a higher humidity. So I thought this might be a better way of keeping the fan on, because I'm starting to get some mold accumulation because the moisture isn't venting fast enough, because I have to keep turning the fan back on. So the other thing is Adam or Atham or whatever we pronounce it, released a millimeter wave sensor, and I decided to order one and give it a try because I do not want to solder one myself.
Who did that?
The same people who built all of your broken switches.
At home?
Yeah, them. So they announced a human presence sensor that is essentially a millimeter wave sensor and a PIR sensor in one. So I've had
Oh,
plenty of PIR sensors, but I have never had a millimeter wave sensor, and they're supposed to be very reliable. And it
sure.
runs ESP Home.
They are reliable short distance. They're if you got a small room or you can afford to put more than one of them up, they are very reliable at short distance. But once you get above like a dozen feet, then
I
they
live
have
in
a
a
hard
one bedroom.
time.
It'll work out.
All right.
Also, that's why they put in the PIR sensor for the further distances. So if you position it right, you can have the presence sensor where you often want to know presence that isn't moving very much, and then you have the motion sensor for the long distance. But I thought it was worth trying because I have never had a millimeter wave sensor. And I figured, what's the harm? It'll take 3 to 4 weeks to get here, but who's rushing? Right?
Yep.
Okay. So until next week, do we want to continue with the Wednesday hour, which seems to have been working, or do you want to move back to Thursday?
I like the Wednesday.
8 p.m.?
8 p.m. would be good.
Okay, unless there's some sort of emergency, which things happen, then we'll expect to continue with that particular slot.
Yay.
Okay, any final thoughts, Jerry, before we move on into the sunset? Actually, I
Negative.
think it's after dark now. It's 9:30.
It is.
So before we ride off into the dark.
Y'all have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. Hope you had a good fourth.
I hope so too, and until next time.
Hasta la próxima semana, mine.
What he said.
Yep.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, folks.
Recording